What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Bischoff and Brown right here on the Detroit Lions podcast. He's Scott Bischoff. I'm Russ Brown. We're back. Scott, my man, how the hell are you?
Glorious. How are you?
I'm glorious. We are glorious. The Lions get another dub. They're back in the win column right where they should be. Big win last week over the Cowboys. And I think we're going to just jump right into it because it was a week ago since they played this game. So we're a little bit behind schedule, and that's my fault. Had some things pop up this week and whatnot, so we just couldn't get to doing the podcast a little bit sooner. But we are going to get this in, and we're going to talk a little Lions Cowboys. We'll touch briefly on that, and then, of course, we'll talk Lions versus Rams for Week 15. And I think we'll just jump in with this Cowboys game on Thursday night. Lions kind of look back to normal on offense. The defense stepped up for the most part. They got some turnovers, and I shouldn't say for the most part. They did. They did get quite a few turnovers. They got pressure on Dak. They got sacks on him. Obviously, there's the big injury. Par for the course with this football team, just injury after injury. But Brian Branch goes down with an Achilles injury.
Just brutal.
Very, very brutal. We can start there if you'd like. I mean, I don't know how they necessarily replace him outside of maybe Avonte Maddox. I know they've brought in guys like Jalen Mills, DeMonte KZ. So we'll kind of see what happens there. But I think Maddox is probably the guy that gets the run at it first. But at the same time, it's like, I don't think Kirby Joseph's coming back. So I don't know what we're going to do at safety, but it's brutal.
It really is. And it makes me... I wonder about this. We look back at, remember the Washington game where they just did, it just looked crazy what they were, what they did on defense with a bunch of backups. And I wonder, in some ways, did they play a bunch of zone and not necessarily simplify things, because it's not simple, but, because you were missing everybody and you were playing backups, you had to put something together and make it work. And they look great in that matchup. And then you get DJ Reed back, you get Terry and Arnold back, and all of a sudden it's real heavy man stuff again. And so, we'll see. We'll see what it looks like with the safety grouping that they have. But there's a bunch of ways to do things. And, I think for the longest time, we felt that the real heavy man stuff is a bad mix if you're not going to get a bunch of really quick pressure. Mm-hmm. We'll see what they choose to do. I mean, this is going to be one of those. This coming matchup is a really interesting matchup. I do think that going back to the Cowboys game, losing CeeDee Lamb was just a blow that Dallas couldn't handle. Yeah. And with Pickens playing the way he was, seemingly kind of disinterested. I don't know if that's the right way to describe that, but that's kind of what
it looked like.
It looked like it, but I don't, maybe he's a little banged. I don't know. I don't know if he's banged up, or there were just some instances where it was like, yeah, it's gotta look a little better than that. But
yeah, still,
Lions did a good job on defense, limiting a pretty potent offense. I did not expect them to win that game. I kind of thought we would see moments of good things, but in the end, that offense was just going to be a little too much for them. But the Lions look great on their side offensively, and they were obviously. They got home a bunch. Huge win. I mean, it's kind of like a play-in game. Obviously, it's not with 4 games left, but It kind of was. I mean, you sort of eliminated Dallas from the playoffs.
Well, that, and it was like you kept the ship afloat. You avoided full-blown panic mode, right? It wasn't like the scene in the Titanic when everybody's getting the emergency boats and life vests and everything. It didn't turn into that because you just hit an iceberg. It was one of those because you just missed it and you kept on going. And everybody's at the front of the ship, singing Kumbaya and playing, whatever. But I don't know what they're going to do in the back end of their secondary. I'm excited for Avonte Maddox. I thought he played well in this game. He was flying around. He was close to having a pick. I think there was a play where he didn't even think he was going to be in position. And he was in a way better position, and it ended up, I think, just bouncing off his chest. And there was another one where if Dak leads the tight end, he's for sure picking it or breaking it up, but it ends up being like a 7-yard gain. So I don't know. The branch thing, it kind of sucks. It really sucks. It royally sucks, but it's one of those like where you've been dealing with him kind of like 50-50 anyways for the season because he has not been fully healthy. But at the same time, like you're missing that guy that triggers down and comes into the box. He can play single high. He can play split safety. He can play man against just about anybody, from the slot or the tight end spot. It just sucks losing a guy that can essentially be a weapon to the back end of your defense. And how you replace him, I don't think Thomas Harper will be ready to go this week. He's got a concussion, and it did not look good. When he was down in that game, it was very scary. And kind of the same thing with CeeDee Lamb, like very scary injury that you don't want to see for any player. So hopefully those guys are, okay long-term and they're back playing football soon. But I think, maybe we see like a Jalen Mills or we see a KZ. I'm kind of excited for KZ just because of how physical he plays.
Yeah, he is a missile. Like he's like 175 pounds.
Yeah.
I don't know how long you hold up being that small the way he hits, but
yeah. And maybe just more so for like season long, like maybe you can get through, this game, the Steelers game, maybe even Minnesota with like a KZ and Maddox. And then maybe against the Bears, you get Kirby Joseph back. And then you've got Kirby and Maddox and maybe a rotation of like Harper and KZ or something like that. I would feel somewhat decent with that. And if not, I don't know. So we'll kind of see. As far as the Lions offense, though, Amon-Ra St. Brown, just an absolute dog. I mean, this guy is one of one. It just is what it is. I love what Dan Campbell said about him. He gave him all his flowers and praise and said he is kind of who we are as a football team. And he's absolutely right. Everything that Dan Campbell mentioned in his post-game presser and even in a few days afterwards talking to the media about Amon-Ra, he's everything that the Lions are about. And he is, and I say he's one of one for this reason. I don't think Jamar Chase plays in that game. I don't think Justin Jefferson plays in that game. I don't think CeeDee Lamb plays in that game. I know George Pickens doesn't play in that game. I think maybe the only, Marvin Harrison Jr. is not playing in that game. Maybe Puka's playing in that game. Maybe like Jackson Smith. I don't know. Maybe Mike Evans. But, you go down the list of receivers, there's a lot of guys that aren't playing in that game. And he did. And he gets asked to do things that these guys, and we've talked about it on the pod before, but he gets asked to do things that other receivers don't have to do. He inserts in the B gap, in the C gap, blocking linebackers and safeties. He's in there pushing a pile at one point in that game with a bad ankle. He's just a stud, man, and we are so blessed and fortunate to have him. And it's funny, I was talking to my son last weekend or maybe Friday. I can't remember what day it was, but either way, I was talking to him last week, and I go, how does it feel to be watching potentially two of the best players, potentially of all time, when it's all said and done, at their positions, at wide receiver and running back, with Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown? I looked at it, I go, do you understand how good that is going to be? And he I think his wheels really got spinning, because going into it, no, he wasn't thinking about it, of course, but after the fact, he got thinking about it. And it's the truth, man. Jahmyr Gibbs he's on that pace of Barry Sanders, man. And the moves that he cut on Deron Bland is really something. And it's crazy. Like we are watching some really talented football players, and it does suck that they've kind of been up and down with their lack of execution, but the execution was much better. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about Cologne and Miles Frasier, specifically Frasier. I know you were juiced up about him on that one touchdown where he was blocking down with Decker. So yeah, I like the direction of where the offense was, but at the same time, you were playing the Dallas Cowboys, who have a atrocious defense, and you've got players like Kenneth Murray taking themselves out of plays. So when you're kind of playing 11 versus 10, it's a little bit different, and you should have offensive explosion that you did. But I do still have some concerns with lack of execution on like third downs. They were 3 for 8 in this game on third down. And that just cannot happen. If you're going to beat the Rams, you can't be 3 for 8 on third down. And you know they're going to get faced with some fourth downs, and they're going to go for it on Sunday. So it's like you better execute on those, because if not, we're going to be talking kind of like we have been in recent weeks.
Yeah, it's interesting because Quentin Williams had been playing really well for Dallas. Kenny Clark's a really good player. These are more interior guys. So, but I'll just tell you, I cackled in that, like, very early in that matchup. James Houston comes off the edge and beats Penei Sewell. Now I don't know exactly what flushes Goff out the way he leaves the pocket there. Maybe I don't want to say it's 100% on Sewell, but I feel like a lot of times there's a little more context in.
Yes.
Like, all right, so Goff leaves and gets sacked by Houston, but did one of the guards get beat quick? It's possible, but still, the idea that James Houston gets a sack early in that game, that's set up because Ezraku is unblockable on the other side of the formation, is just hilarious.
Yeah.
In a bad way. Like, you and I talked about it. We knew it was coming. We knew that Houston was going to get a sack.
Yep. Didn't bet it. Should have.
Yeah. But like, it just was like, I thought Ezraku's good. It still baffles me that people consider him undersized when he's just short. He's got crazy good length. He'll defend the run. He does all these things. He had multiple plays early in that game where it's like, he's just, Decker's not going to really block him all that effectively in this game. So it was just humorous to think about that stuff. But I do think that somehow the Lions did a really good job of sort of limiting the interior D line of Dallas that had been playing really well.
Yeah.
Their offense was pretty prolific in that matchup. So, we talked a little before. I don't know how deep we want to get into why it looked different. They did spread the ball out significantly more in that game than they have in I would say quite a while. My brain wants to consider the possibilities of Amon-Ra not practicing, forcing Goff to look elsewhere.
Yeah.
During practice, which made it. I mean, in the game, there were times when he wasn't looking at Amon-Ra. And maybe it was by design. I don't know exactly what the Lions' plan was with the banged up Amon-Ra St. Brown, but whatever it was, the offense looked really good. It was fun to watch. It was a huge win. Again, I'll admit I didn't necessarily think that the Lions were going to win that game, just because I was feeling like it was just too much. The Cowboys presented too much of a challenge, specifically on defense. But huge win. This coming week, man, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll get into the Rams here in one sec, but I just wanted to kind of cap it with, I'm glad that the Lions offense went kind of back to their roots in a sense. Like, we did see a big David Montgomery run in there, 35 yards to the house. Penei Sewell had a big block there. And again, granted, this is the play that I was talking about with Kenneth Murray kind of taking himself out of the play, which he did in this instance. But I understood why he, on the defensive perspective, why he went to the right. I don't know why he went so far to the right.
Yeah.
There was an opening, and I think he thought there was going to be a cutback from Montgomery right there. So he definitely compensated for that, but he ended up getting put in the wash. So, I like that they went with quick passes. They went across the middle of the field. We saw Saint with a couple of big, runs after the catch and, close to scoring on a couple of them. The touchdown to Tesla, which you were talking a little bit beforehand. There was a kind of like switch release on the outside there, and Tesla was wide open. Not wide open, but Goff put the ball perfectly right where it needed to be. But then we saw a great performance from Jamison Williams, who continues to grow as a player on the field and off the field. And he's getting a lot of shine right now in the media for his contributions to the community in Detroit. And it's cool seeing that stuff. So, like, I know we're always sometimes negative, or we have this high standard with the offense, but like, we still have the number one scoring offense in the league, which is crazy. Despite,
it's crazy.
And I think the thing is like, we have these explosions like this where we put up a ton of points, like against the Giants, obviously here, against the Bears earlier in the season. So We'll see how this one plays out and if they can continue. But I just love getting the ball out quickly. I love having the routes, spray to the sideline and cut back into the middle quickly with your best players, not players like Isaac Tesla or a tight end that is a third or fourth string guy. You're doing it with your playmakers, and I think that's the key. If you're gonna force the ball to them anyways, do it where they win and going vertical with maybe some comebacks from JMO or some option routes or some crossers with him, and then of course anything with Amon-Ra works. So just keep doing that, and then buy your time and shots with Frasier and Tesla, and I think we'll be good.
Yeah, and it's the idea of just letting Goff throw the ball into the middle of the field is good. That's generally a good thing.
Yeah. So we'll see if that continues as we move forward to week 15 against the Rams. There's a great win, like we said, against the Cowboys, much needed, keeps everything afloat, and we're moving along here with a 8-5 football team that is playing a very good Los Angeles Rams team. The Rams enter this game as 6-point favorites, which I think is probably a little high, but at the same time probably reasonable just because of the way that the Lions have been playing, and that doesn't matter for why we're talking about this game. We're going to talk about it regardless of what the spread is, just throwing it out there for people. But what are you looking at for this game with the Rams, whether it be offense or defense? Obviously Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, there's obviously a lot of obvious things, but I know there was something that you had mentioned before the show, so I'm really curious as far as the ground game and things like that, your perspective on that.
I don't even know what I mentioned.
I tried just about.
I'm kidding.
Oh.
No, I think I am interested in what the Lions. So the Lions defense, it feels to me like they're a heavier defense, because of their desire to play an extra linebacker. And the Rams running game is pretty damn potent, right? And they do great things running the ball, whether it's Kyron Williams or Blake Corum. Those guys both are very effective runners with their vision and then their ability to force missed tackles. Neither of those guys is a breakaway runner, right? But they're going to just grind yards on you. And it's a fascinating matchup with what the Lions do with their size on defense, and obviously their size up front too, and their defensive line. I wonder if there is a little bit of a glimmer of hope in there that the Rams haven't necessarily faced a defense like the Lions with the size and stoutness of their front seven against the run. And can the Lions limit what the Rams running game does?
Yeah.
It's going to be tough because their offensive line is very effective in run blocking. They have a really nice design. It's just, what's the matchup like? So I'm really interested to see how it all shakes out from that standpoint. And then the question that just kind of sits in the back of my head is, does it even matter? Because it won't matter if you can't pressure Matt Stafford. If you force 3rd and 6 or 3rd and 7 and you don't get a lot of pressure on him and he can just pick you apart.
Yeah.
Right. So that's so on defense, that's the whole thing is, can you force Stafford into bad down and distance and then pressure him and make him, can you take the ball away from him a couple of times?
Yeah.
Can you make him a little rattled or jittery or whatever it is? Maybe you can't. I don't know. But I know that if you do a great job against the run, if Stafford's just sitting back there hitting Nacua, pretty regularly in that game, and then, I don't know what's happening with Devontae Adams' hamstring. I'm not sure what's going on with the injury report or any of that stuff, but I don't love the matchup there either. Those guys are dudes. Stafford's playing incredibly well right now. Obviously it's gonna be a really interesting matchup, but what do you think about that whole run stuff? Do you think there's anything there?
Yeah, no, there is. You're hitting the nail on the head, and especially after playing the Cardinals, it was very telling of like maybe this is the direction that they're going as a football team this late in the season with Devontae Adams banged up with the hamstring, because Adams only played in 30 snaps last Sunday against the Cardinals, which was only 43% of the snaps. Now, on 64% of their snaps as an offense, so they had 70 total offensive snaps on 64% of them, they used 3 tight end sets. So that was the most 13 personnel used in any game yet this season. They had a 51-31% split for Kyren Williams and Blake Corum, 51% of the carries for, or 51% of the offensive touches or snaps for Kyren Williams. But between the two, they had a season high 249 rushing yards. Now, granted, we are not the Arizona Cardinals. We don't have players, unplugged and disconnected. We don't have, the injuries that they're dealing with on the offensive side of the football with our quarterback and those types of things. And, whatever the case may be. Sure, we're dealing with injuries, but we are a far better football team than the Arizona Cardinals. And to be also fair to our coaching staff, we have a far better coaching staff than what they have, because their head coach is a complete boob, if you will. So I think when I look at this,
how do you feel?
I'm just not a fan of Jonathan Gannon as a head coach. I don't like that he's, getting into it with players on the sidelines and getting physical. And I think he's a little bit in over his head. Granted, I don't think he has a quarterback that's invested in being there and playing football at a high level, but that's, again, I'm getting down a rabbit hole that I don't need to get down. I just am curious how, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 looks like outside of Puka Nacua in this game, because, is it going to be Mumpfield? Is it going to be, using the multiple tight end sets that they have? Because in reality, they have 4 tight ends. They've got Parkinson, Allen, Ferguson. They use Nick Vannett, who used to be a Lion. So it'll be very I'll be just curious how they go about this. But their offensive line's playing at a really high level. Their defense is legit with Nate Landman in the middle. He's not going to take himself out of plays. So like when we run the ball downhill, we're going to have to get to the second level. None of this, missing guys. And I'll be curious what we do at, for us left guard wise. Is it going to be Cologne again getting the start, or is it going to be Miles Frasier? I would hope we play a little bit more of Frasier, just because
I think that's what'll happen.
Yeah.
Be, maybe it's a 2/3, 1/3 split. I don't know what the split was last week, but
yeah, I think he played 23 snaps, if I remember right. So, I think we in total only had like 60 snaps on offense. So whatever that is, maybe it flips. Maybe he plays like 48 and Cologne only plays 23 or something like that. But
that would be a fantastic outcome if he's able to play and play at let's call it a rookie level, right? I mean, he played a young man's game in both, from a penalty standpoint. He took some penalties. There were some very negative things that he did, Miles Frasier. Yeah. There was some hugely positive things he did too. He had a very volatile game, but I guess being the eternal optimist in some ways, which is just ridiculous for me to say this about myself. It's so freaking ridiculous that I just said that. I saw Frasier and I was super hopeful about his long-term prognosis. I know that. So going back to the draft, I loved him in pass pro.
Yep.
The things that I worried more about, the reasons I was concerned about Ratledge in the draft were his overly aggressive, his desire to knock people out.
Yeah.
What would cause him to have issues picking up stunts and loops and twists and all this stuff, because he just did not see it coming, because he was so singularly focused on the player who he thought he needed to block, right? And there have been times this year where you can see that with Ratledge, that there are times when he doesn't pick up twists and stunts and that kind of things super effectively. I didn't see any of that stuff with Miles Frasier. I just didn't. In pass pro, I didn't think he was a great run blocker, but in pass pro, I thought he was phenomenal considering you got him where you got him in the draft, right? At LSU, premium place against, big time pass rushers. I thought he was kind of loved the pick, right? So the hope is that he can play himself onto that offensive line and find a place, whether that's as a center. And I think because he seems to be such a smart kid, at least from a film standpoint, that center could be a destination for him. I don't know, but I also know that you better figure it out quickly whether you think he can play center or not, because going into next year, and we don't need to get down the draft rabbit hole yet either. The most important hole that they need to fill or figure out is center right now. I mean, I know you need to be thinking about tackle too, and this is part of this conversation. What if Frasier can play right tackle too? Like they need to figure this out. But getting him on the field right now and seeing how he can handle himself is very, very important. That he kind of caved down the left side of the offensive line, the right side of the defensive line on their touchdown, on Gibbs' touchdown run. That was great to see. Just he's very physically, he's ready. Like he's not overwhelmed. He's physically capable of moving bodies, a full gap, all that stuff. So I was pretty hopeful from what I saw of him. If we consider that we were expecting to get a rookie young person's performance, what'd you see? What do you think?
No, yeah, I think you're absolutely right with Miles Frasier. I think obviously there was the 2 false starts, and collectively with the offensive line, that's been a problem all season. It hasn't been just a rookie issue. It's been a collective group where they've had bad holding calls, illegal formations, illegal motions, things that are just killing drives. And there were times in that game against Cowboys where that happened, but a lot of promising moments from him where he flashed good footwork. He was fast. He played physical. He played square. It didn't look like the game was going too fast for him. And that's why I want to see more Miles Frasier over Cologne, because Cologne still has these moments where he completely does like a 180 or a complete 90-degree turn and just opens up that A gap or opens up that B gap. And it's like, you're going to get somebody crushed with some of the simulated pressures and the way that the Rams defense plays, because they've got some dudes in LA, and we know that, right? I talked about Landman, but like their safeties, Curl and Kinchins, man, those guys are physical. They can come down and hit. I do wonder if that helps the Lions a little bit, take more vertical shots. So maybe we'll see a little bit of Tesla, maybe taking a slot fade, or the same thing with JMO. Yeah. And maybe that's when rather than on the dagger concept, for example, maybe you've got Amon-Ra breaking in and JMO's going vertical and clearing out that safety. And if the safety comes down on Amon-Ra, you just throw it deep. Who knows what's going to happen? But I'm very pleased with Miles Frasier. And again, I would like to see more of him, especially because the future is Mahogany, Frasier, Ratledge. These are the guys that we want to see. Yep. So nothing against Cologne, who's here on a 1-year deal, but you were here, you're a veteran, you're fine. You can be, part of some of this, but I need to see more from the rookie and keep seeing that, because, Braden Fisk, Byron Young, Kobe Turner, Jared Verse, these guys are impactful.
You're going to bring it.
Yeah. These are impactful players, and they can get home with just a 4-man rush. They can get home with a 3-man rush. So I really hope it's all hands on deck with this. I will say, Lions offense, I loved that Anthony Firkser stepped up in a big way. I thought Ross Dwelley played actually some of his best football. I was a little surprised that they waived him. So I'm assuming that means, Zylstra will be back in the lineup, but don't necessarily know for sure. I think in this matchup, if the Lions can get their ground game going and lean on that a little bit, and then just take some shots down the field, none of this, second guessing it, holding on the ball, waiting to get sacked. Just take your 3-step drop, your 5-step drop, and chuck it. And if it's too deep and it's incomplete, so be it. But you can't have possession stalled by penalties, nor can you have these drives stalled with sacks and pressures and interrupting plays. So I think as we kind of shift towards, probably the end of the show, but with the Rams, I think that the biggest thing is, I know I'm saying lean on the ground game, but Emmanuel Forbes has done a really good job, like revitalizing his career. He looked like a first round bust in Washington.
Yeah.
And here he comes to the Rams and he's playing great football. He's kind of looking like their number one corner at this point, but he's going to have his hands full. And I think it's one of those where don't be afraid to attack him. Go and put Jamo out there and have him beat him one-on-one vertically. Have Amon-Ra do what he does and beat him. And if you can kind of create some frustration in the back end, I think that can
make
make
questions.
Yeah. I think it's going to make things a lot better for the Lions offense than I think people realize. But by far the biggest thing is just getting better on third down. And Dan Campbell continues to acknowledge that. They did a great job executing on first and second down against the Cowboys. Yeah. But if they can continue that, then I think this game will be really close. I think it'll be one of those games where, probably comes down to the last possession, and hopefully it's us with the football and not Matthew Stafford, because we know how that goes when he's got the ball last. So
yeah. I mean, it's another matchup where, like, going into this season, if we pan back, multiple months ago, it was like that felt like, okay, well, kind of feels like that's probably one of the hardest games on their schedule. That and maybe the Philly game over the back half, right?
Yeah.
This week and the Philly game, I think, were the ones where you would say, well, that's tough. Obviously, this goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. But the Lions' playoff hopes take a huge jump if you win this game.
That was going to be my next question. I was going to say, if they win or lose this game, we all know what it does when they win it, but like win or losing the game, I mean, how do we feel? Obviously, maybe it depends on how it looks. How do they win? How do they lose? Whatever. But win or lose, I mean, how are we feeling coming out of this game, getting this game behind us?
Well, so it's a really good question, and I think it's something everybody should probably be thinking about. Like, if you lose this game, you got 3 games left, right? You got Minnesota on the road, you've got Pittsburgh, I believe, at home, and then you end the season, and this is just an absolute freaking it's a terror to think about having to go into Chicago in week 18. I mean, maybe I shouldn't be thinking about it that. Maybe we should be thinking, hey, this is your chance to get in. You get in, who knows what happens?
Exactly.
Go beat Chicago. But I don't love the idea of it being a play-in game between the Lions and the Bears in week 18 for the playoffs. The Bears have, I think the Bears play the 49ers, they play Green Bay, they play the Lions.
They do not have an easy schedule. I was just about to bring that up because, and I don't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
Because I was going to say, if you beat the Rams, and let's just say in a hypothetical, the Bears, maybe I don't think they lose to the Browns, but maybe they do. I mean, it's going to be -20 potentially in that game.
Yeah.
Maybe they win that game, or maybe they lose that game. Who knows? But they finish with the Packers, the Niners, and us. Like, there's a chance they lose out. There's a chance. I kind of
feel like if the Lions if they win this week and they're 11-5 going into Chicago, that it's like, okay, it almost, at that point in time, you're looking like, all right, what's the matchup looking like in week 1 of the playoffs?
Right.
But obviously you got to win this week to feel that way. I'm approaching it like, all right, they're going to be 8-6, and they kind of need to finish 3-0, which is tough.
It is tough.
But this is the situation that they're in. They're talented enough. The Lions are a great football team.
They're the weirdest team of all time. The weirdest good football team of all time. But go on. I'm sorry.
It's just the NFL this year feels like on a week-to-week basis that it's day drinking. Like, stop
that. I like
Even
that.
Yesterday, like the game last night we're recording Friday. Well, I mean, I don't know anything about the NFL right now. I have no idea what's happening. It's just nobody does. Like, I don't think there's really many straight lines of thought with like what's really going. I mean, is Carolina really going to win the NFC South? What's happening? It's crazy. I don't know how Tampa plays the way they do last night. They're up 28-14 in the fourth quarter, and you think, well, this game's over. And what the hell, So who knows? It does feel like this has been a really weird season for the Lions. And it has. I mean, with some of the weird injuries, the Frank Ragnow thing is just the weirdest story ever. It just is. And it gets stranger by the day. That's a story that I think we'll be talking about. I hope we'll be talking about in the postseason or in the run up to the draft. Like, is Ragnow really going to come back? Because I don't know if you saw
Hank Fraley's.
Yeah. Left that
it.
door wide open, didn't he?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. And, I don't want to rush to the off season or anything like that. I want to try to enjoy this last month and hopefully, a couple more weeks of football going into, February potentially. But yeah, it's going to be a really interesting off season. It's going to be a really interesting finish to this regular season that has been certainly up and down and I don't think any way that we had ever imagined. But as we've said, we never expected this team to come back and be 15-2. Like, that was just never going to be the case. We always said 10-7, 11-6, 12-5, maybe at best. And they're kind of trending right where they need to be as far as where we finish. So how they get there, I guess it doesn't really matter. It's just let's get there and just keep winning. And hopefully that's the case.
Bad news, dude. This is breaking like 30 minutes ago about Kirby Joseph. It sounds like he may be headed to IR.
Yep.
Lions safety Kirby Joseph sustained a setback in his recovery from a knee injury and can be placed on IR, which would end his regular season.
And who's reporting that?
Ari Mirov.
Yep. And what did I text you last night?
And so everybody needs to know this. Last night you texted me that you expected that news. And it's like, it's just it's a dagger, Yeah. So
no,
it's another, who knows?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we're getting that news now rather than putting this together and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, idiots, he's done. No, we know he's probably done. And I think there's a reason to why they've brought in so many different safeties to try to figure this thing out. So we went from having the best safety tandem on the season to not really being able to see them together for the last 7-8 weeks.
Yep.
And
long term, who knows?
You don't know. I will say this. I was looking at his contract. If he's able to play next year and let's just say things aren't right and he does say long-term, I'm done, you don't have a huge dead cap number. So there is a positive there. It just sucks because he's only like 25 and he is such a good football player and there's such a bright future for him. Let's just hope, he needs an off season. Maybe he needs some type of potential surgery. Who knows how that works? I mean, technology is crazy today. We'll see how it goes. I mean, it's unfortunate, but this is something I think, like, just as a person that, as we break this stuff down every week and writing about it and watching them and being a fan, like, I can't even get like emotionally like detached or upset about it because like the Aiden Hutchinson stuff, everything that happened last year, the stuff that we've experienced with this team, it's like, I feel like Dan Campbell has molded us as a fan base to just be ready for whatever. And like, no matter what happens, good or bad, we're going to be all right. We're going to figure this out. We're going to make it work. And I think it's time for other guys to step up. And I don't know who that's going to be outside of Avonte Maddox, but the Lions have some veterans that have experience, that have played at a high level in the NFL. Maybe they haven't done it in a while, but KZ led the league in interceptions at one point. Jalen Mills looked like a pretty decent player for Philly once upon a time. Maybe you find something there. And at the same time, if Thomas Harper can come back, maybe not this week, but next week, that's okay. Like, Thomas Harper's a pretty good football player. He has shown that. He's gotten a lot of praise. So
I mean, short term, it is what it is. They got to make it work. It's more that you sign Kirby Joseph and some of that feels a little bit, there's muddiness around what that's going to look like going into the draft, free agency, and then the offseason and camp and stuff. Yeah. But there's maybe a little more muddiness around Branch because he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. He was due a contract, and now it feels like, can you do that? Because the whole thing's got to wait now because you just don't know exactly when he's going to come back, how he looks when he comes back.
It kind of feels like
a huge injury to come back from. It's just there's a lot of unknown even I like you said, and that's good. We need to focus on right here and right now, but just broadcasting into the future, like there's so much unknown around their safeties going into next year, and we're not going to have any real clarity on any of it.
Yeah, no, we're not. And yeah, it is a bummer. I will say I thought, long term with the Branch stuff kind of feels like it could be like a Levi Ozarike situation where maybe he gets a 1-year deal, type deal. Maybe he gets the franchise tag, then gets a 1-year deal type thing. Maybe you can stretch it out, for 2 years or so. Yeah. But at the end of the day, like with Kirby Joseph, I just kind of had envisioned this was going to happen because you don't go limited practice to no practice to no practice unless there's something going on. And
yes, yeah,
watching the movement, there was limitations, and it is what it is. We can see what this looks like. Obviously it's concerning, but they've been getting by without strong performances from Brian Branch. They've been getting through it without Kirby Joseph. Yeah. So maybe they'll be all right. We'll see. But obviously, Rams, Lions, must see TV. We're not going to do the whole Jared Goff returning to LA, Matt Stafford. That's been beaten into oblivion a million times over the last couple seasons. They've played each other. We've won. Maybe this is their time to win. We'll see. But I know this one, probably kind of took us off our path a little bit, but key player to watch on offense, key player to watch on defense. I don't know if you want to go first. I can go first, gladly go first if you want, whatever you want to do on this one. I'm
going to go Goff. We'll know. It's funny because very quickly, right? Like
first drive,
you'll know quick, right? He needs to play. He needs to put. I mean, we talked about this, but he was playing at a relative MVP level through the first half of the season. I mean, he was playing great. He needs to have one of his best games of the year this Sunday in a variety of ways. But some of that is just dealing with what is coming. But, it was nice last week to see him get rid of the ball very quickly. That's going to be really important this week. He's gonna be the guy that drives the bus, so to speak, this week.
Yeah,
and everybody knows why. So,
nope, you're absolutely. Man, there's a couple different guys that I've thought about. I think for me, the easy button would say Amon-Ra St. Brown. How does he look against, Emmanuel Forbes? How does he look coming off the ankle? But I think that one is obvious. I think Taylor Decker would be a good one. How does he look against Jared Verse? The power. Decker is obviously, as we know, playing banged up. Dave Burkett put out that great article about, weighing retirement and that. When we get to the offseason, it's going to be a very interesting offseason, like we mentioned. I do wonder what Decker looks like in that role, but with that, it makes me lean on Miles Frasier. And as we've talked about him, how does he look? Does he get some run in this game? And if he is playing, he's going to face some line stunts. He is going to have to maybe help with Jared Verse. He may have to help with Kobe Turner. How does he look in this game against a Rams defense that can bring it with their front seven? So I'll say Miles Frasier, just simply because I don't know what the Lions are going to be doing at tight end, whether it's Zylstra or Ferkser. Obviously Montgomery and Gibbs and J-Mo, those guys are going to do their thing. Same thing with Amon-Ra. So I'm going to go Miles Frasier. But I'm with you with Jared Goff. You'll know kind of right away, and he can.
We're going to see a lot of Dan Skipper this week.
Probably, right? I would have to imagine just to widen that pass rusher out.
Yeah.
But who knows? Maybe they can get some type of vertical push in the ground game, and who knows? We'll see. Yeah. But switching to the defense, key player to watch on defense. Obviously, it won't be Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph at this point. Too soon? Sorry.
I'm going to go Hutchinson. He needs to have one of those trademark games.
Okay.
He just does. I mean, they have to get pressure. They have to make Stafford. They got to get him to move.
Yeah.
Like get him off of his spot and just force him to feel a little bit of pressure. It'd be nice to hit him a little bit and make him, I mean, we've seen some of that stuff in the past where if he is rattled, he does. There are moments where he'll give you opportunities In order to get that, though, you got to hit him. You got to get pressure, and to me, it's got to be Hutchinson. It just has to be.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think you're absolutely right. He's getting closer and closer, and man, it was cool. There's a thing on the Lions YouTube page where he's mic'd up, and it's awesome. I mean, I always like those, but it's like 30 minutes long, and just seeing his energy and seeing what he goes through in a game, like, he just gives it all he's got. And, it sucks at times seeing him get this close to getting a sack, and it just doesn't happen. But I'm going to go with DJ Reed, the corner, because I know he had that great interception, just really took it away from the pass catcher last weekend against the Cowboys, and then, made an acrobatic catch to make sure that he secured it. But he's a couple games back now from his injury. And he's even mentioned, like, I got to keep pushing to get to 100%, and I just got to keep getting these reps. And they paid him some money to be here. He was paid to be kind of like a number one guy here, and with no Arnold and Amik kind of struggling a little bit, and some of the secondary news that we've been getting with injuries, this is one of those scenarios where you can kind of step up and maybe take away half the field, and maybe you're locking down Puka, or if Devontae Adams plays, maybe you can lock him down. And if he doesn't play, okay, maybe you're locking up some of these other guys, but you got to have a game, and you got to, keep doing what you're doing. Because outside of that, he did give up some catches, and he has given up some catches since he's been back. So I'm going to assume that Puka is going to do his thing, and Devontae Adams will do I'm assuming this offense for the Rams will still do their thing at times. Yeah. Like, can you limit it? And can you get a couple of turnovers or big pass breakups on 3rd and 4th down? Or even on 2nd and long or something. So DJ Reed is going to be the player for me to watch on defense. Of course, we would love to know in the comments below who your key player to watch on defense is, who your key player to watch on offense is, and of course, what you think is going to happen with the Lions versus Rams, and of course, season long with the Lions. You got anything to add?
No.
Okay.
You?
No, I got nothing other than just some business, of course. As always, you guys can follow us on Twitter or X at Russ NFL Draft and at Bischoff_Scott. You can, of course, follow the Detroit Lions podcast as well on all social media platforms. Just search it up. You'll find it. And, of course, here on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all podcast platforms, wherever you get your favorite shows, you can rate, review, and subscribe to the Detroit Lions podcast. So be sure to do that. That's it for us. That's all we've got for our Week 14 review of Lions Cowboys, our Week 15 preview of Lions versus Rams. On unfortunate news on Kirby Joseph, but we kind of have seen it coming. He has not played in quite some time. So we'll kind of just keep it moving here, and all the Lions have to do is just keep winning. So we'll hope they do that, but that's all we got here. Bischoff and Brown on the Detroit Lions podcast. He's Scott Bischoff. I'm Russ Brown. We'll be back next week for more Bischoff and Brown right here on the Detroit Lions podcast.